Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, blue liquor shills, Tesla, search peasants, vassals, mad scientists, geniuses, visionaries, Nikola Tesla fans. I'm a useful idiot. That's Nikola Tesla, and that's who we're going to talk about today. I wanted to do this video back on July 10th because that was International Nikola Tesla Day, and the legend of Nikola Tesla has been spreading over the years. That's a good thing. This is a very good example of history being written by the state. So according to state history, Edison is the greatest inventor of all time, unchallenged, and yet most of the technology that we have today is actually based on Tesla technology and not necessarily Edison technology. And so that's another reason why it's an important story, but it's also an important story because Nikola Tesla is one of those rare, extremely rare individuals, a true genius, a true visionary, someone who tapped into something from beyond. I would even go so far as to say that Nikola Tesla is to science what Jimi Hendrix is to music. And the reason why everybody should be paying attention to the Nikola Tesla story, because he is actually responsible for and created the prototypes for the 10 following foundations of a modern technological society. And that includes 1, alternating current, 2, light and light bulbs, 3, x-rays, 4, radio, 5, remote control, 6, the electric motor, 7, robotics, 8, lasers, 9, wireless communication, and 10, limitless free energy. So an astounding list, not the least of which it is astounding because these are all things that he was working on back in the 1880s and around the turn of the century and into the 20s and 30s. He emigrated to the United States in 1884, and that's when he hooked up with Thomas Edison. So let's go through a little bit of his history. He's actually from Croatia and is ethnically a Serb. He spoke 6 languages by the time he was 18. And he had a photographic memory. His father was a priest, and his mother was a brilliant intellectual. And they turned out a very humanitarian son. And this turned out to be his downfall later because he was never really that interested in music. And so he immigrated to the United States in 1884, and he started working with Thomas Edison. And then they had a fierce competition over the fact that Edison had already been championing direct current, and Tesla had proven that alternating current was the more efficient and modern way to go. And Tesla ended up winning the contest to harness the energy of Niagara Falls. So this was a huge coup. And then he also lit up the World's Fair in Chicago. And so Tesla has quite a few feats under his belt. And a very celebrated character in his time. There's another good example of how the state can rearrange history, because you wouldn't know that he was one of the most celebrated figures of his day from the 1880s all the way into the 1930s. No small feat, and yet most of the documentation of him in state history is expelled, and we're left with Thomas Edison. And so, interestingly enough, Thomas Edison even did atrocious spectacles of electrocuting dogs and elephants to prove how dangerous alternating current was, and yet, of course, now it is the dominant technology in the world. And the fact that Tesla could invent battery-operated electronic remote control in 1898 is astounding. Or the fact that Marconi in Italy is given the credit for inventing radio, but it was later proven that he used a Tesla patent to do it, and his claim to have invented radio was overturned by the Supreme Court in 1943. And then light bulbs. Tesla had been using light bulbs 40 years before they became a standard in the industry, and because he invented his own. And then the fact that he foresaw television, he foresaw the internet, he foresaw technology that is still hardly understood today. And in fact, we were talking about the this laser that he invented. He invented a particle beam weapon in 1934. New York Times reported that Tesla developed a death ray particle beam weapon, quote, a weapon to end all wars. And interestingly enough, he was a U.S. patriot, and he offered it to the United States, but he offered all the countries, the major countries in the world, increments of the technology for this death ray, so that they would have to work together if they wanted to invent this machine, and then of course they would all possess it, and there would be a huge standoff. So perhaps he saw the coming of the nuclear age as well. That's another reason why Tesla is relevant to me right now, is because Tesla was aware of nuclear technology and warned of going down that direction for energy. His theory was to tap into the ionosphere above the Earth for limitless free energy for all. And of course, these kind of visionaries are pushed aside so that industries can grow up to make a lot of money. And then there's suggestions too that the particle beam weapon has been completely realized in the 1970s, and in fact, some theorize that the Soviet Union already had particle beam weapons and lasers and a Star Wars system in place in 1968. But that's a topic for another video, as I like to say. And the whole HARP system up in Alaska, and this is a device that resonates the ionosphere. It operates like a large microwave and supposedly can do earthquakes and weather effects and weather modification. And so there's still a lot of Tesla technology that's very advanced. There's theories that a lot of anti-gravity flying discs are based on Tesla technology. And who knows? When he died penniless in New York City in his apartment, the government confiscated all of his patents. And most of them have been revealed since then, but a lot still remain classified. He had over 700 important patents, most of those in the public domain. So who knows what sort of technology lies in the vault. Here it is 100 years later, more than 100 years later, and all his technology is still incredibly relevant. And then the fact that the story just resonates with all the kind of history and economics and politics that I talk about a lot on this channel. The fact that he got involved with Edison, and Edison, a scientist, just like anybody in government or banking or corporate America, has an ego and is going to defend the status quo. And so we find that dynamic. And then we also find J.P. Morgan financing some projects for Tesla, and then pulling the plug on him, realizing he wanted to give away free energy that he couldn't make money off of. So the J.P. Morgan Chase story goes all the way back to these glory days, and the whole story of Warden Cliff Tower, built in 1900 in New Jersey, and J.P. Morgan was financing that. And when he realized that Marconi was already developing the radio, he felt like Tesla had sold him out. But then Tesla reconfigured this project to distribute free energy. That's when J.P. Morgan really headed for the hills. And there's also talk that it had the capacity to do weather modification even back then, and shift tectonics. So and then he had a project in the 30s out in Colorado Springs, the same area where he supposedly built this particle beam ray, and that's where he was also distributing energy over vast distances and then tapping into it to prove his theories of tapping into the ionosphere. And little side stories that had a lot of appeal to me was the fact that Tesla really embraced the Swami Vivekananda that visited in the 1890s and in the United States, and the whole Sanskrit language and a lot of the concepts in Hinduism had a lot of appeal to Tesla and resonated with him, and he felt like he really found a language that expressed what he was going through. And that goes a long way in explaining his visions, where these devices and technology just appeared to him complete in his mind, and he only had to sketch them out. And proof of this is when his entire lab, worth $1 million in turn-of-the-century money, burned down in 1900 or 1898. The lab burned down, and everything was lost, all his work. And yet, because of his photographic memory, and because all this material comes to him complete in his head, he was able to reproduce all his work over again. So nothing ended up being lost. And so a remarkable story. I recommend that anyone look up more material on Tesla. Certainly one of the most astounding figures of the 19th century, one of the most astounding figures of the 20th century, and now continues to be one of the most astounding figures of the 21st century. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.